The bridge of the Eternal Garden was silent. The sensor feeds showed only static, then a wash of blinding white noise as the shockwave from the nebula overwhelmed their delicate receivers. The tactical map was a mess of confused energy signatures. The elegant holographic display flickered and died. Counselor Nyra's fronds were completely still, a sign of deepest distress. Fleet Commander Elix's crystalline form had dimmed to a faint, worried glow. No one spoke. They had seen the forge plunge into the swarm, seen the silver tide close over it, and then chaos. Now there was nothing. Scan again, Elix chimed softly, the sound barely audible. Scanning, Commander. Heavy interference from particulate matter and energy dispersion. Reading no coherent signals from the swarm mass. It is fragmented. The sensor officer's voice was full of disbelief. The gravitational anomaly is gone. And the forge? Nyra asked, her voice a dry rustle. No transponder signal. No energy signature. Structural debris consistent with the forge's hull composition is detected, but it is mixed with the inert remains of the swarm biomass. A heavy feeling settled over the chamber. They had done it. The humans had shattered the devourer swarm. The galaxy was saved. But the cost. The brave, strange, terrifying Deathworlders were gone, consumed by the very force they had unleashed. It was a victory, but it tasted of ashes. Send a recovery fleet, Elix ordered, its light pulsing with a slow, mournful rhythm. The smallest drones. Collect what remains. We will honor them. Hours passed. The Coalition's most delicate salvage drones, like floating seeds, moved into the nebula debris field. It was a strange new landscape. Where there had been a living, flowing horror, there was now only frozen, metallic-looking droplets, drifting like dust. And there, in the center of it all, was a shape. The drone feeds reached the bridge. The shape was the forge, or what was left of it. It was grotesquely twisted. The entire front third was crumpled like paper. The heavy frontal plating was bent inward. Mass driver barrels were snapped off. The hull was blackened and scarred. It looked dead. No life signs, the drone operator reported. Minimal power readings. Only emergency battery backup. It is a tomb. Bring it home, Counselor Nyra said, a deep sorrow in her voice. With the utmost care. As the drones attached gentle tow fields to the wreck, something on the feed flickered. A light. A tiny, blinking red light on the forge's shattered hull, near a mangled airlock. Wait, Elix said, its crystal brightening a fraction. Magnify. The image focused. The red light was an external emergency beacon. And next to it, the manual release wheel for the airlock was slowly, jerkily, turning from the inside. On the bridge, every being froze with a final, protesting shriek of tortured metal. The airlock door was forced open a few centimeters. A glove appeared, fingers curling around the edge. Then another. With a grunt that was picked up by the drone's audio, the door was shoved open just wide enough for a figure to squeeze through. It was Jay. His suit was scorched and torn at the shoulder. His faceplate was webbed with cracks. He moved stiffly, pulling himself out into the debris-filled space. He attached a safety line to the hull, then turned and reached back inside. He helped another figure out. It was Min, who was limping, one leg of his suit rigid with a makeshift splint. Then came Yuna, then Hannah, supporting Tay between them. His arm was bound across his chest with strips of torn suit lining. Last came Laya, the pilot, her movements slow but precise, carrying a broken data slate. They were all there. All six, battered, broken, but alive. They gathered on the broken hull of their ship, looking at the frozen sea of dead swarm around them, and at the approaching coalition drones. They did not cheer. They did not embrace. Jay gave a thumbs-up gesture towards the drone's camera, a simple, universal signal. Then he pointed at Tay, who was gesturing angrily at the crumpled front of the forge, apparently complaining about the damage. The celebration on the Eternal Garden was a quiet, stunned thing. It was relief mixed with a kind of terrified wonder. The medical bay was prepared, their most advanced healing pods readied. The humans were brought aboard, that they were a medical nightmare. The Coalition doctors scanned them with instruments designed for fragile biology. They found broken bones, severe internal bruising, concussions, radiation exposure levels that would have killed a Veln instantly, and traces of toxic chemicals in their bloodstreams. The humans accepted treatment, but seemed impatient with it. Jay's cracked ribs were set. Min's leg was mended with a bone knitter. Tay's dislocated shoulder was put back in place. You should be in deep healing sleep for a full cycle. The lead Florian doctor chimed, Franz waving with concern as it examined Hannah's scans. We'll rest, Hannah said, her voice tired but firm. But not that long. We need to move. Move? Your ship is destroyed. Your bodies are... We've had worse, Min grunted, testing his newly fixed leg by putting weight on it. He winced, but stood. 3 days later, the humans were assembled in the main atrium. They still moved with care, but they were on their feet. The entire Coalition Council was there, along with hundreds of representatives from every species. Watching on feeds across the fleet, Fleet Commander Elix addressed them, its voice a formal, beautiful chime of gratitude. It spoke of their bravery, their sacrifice, their place in the annals of galactic history. It offered them a permanent home, titles, the resources of 1,000 worlds. Jay listened patiently. When the commander finished, he stepped forward. His simple clothes, provided by the Coalition, looked strange on his solid frame. Thank you, he said, his voice the same low rumble. But we have to go. A wave of shocked silence swept the chamber. Counselor Naira leaned forward. Go? Where? You are heroes. You are welcome here forever. Your world, Earth. It must be told of your victory. Jay looked at the gathered aliens, their delicate forms, their faces full of gratitude and confusion. Earth knows we're here. They got the same signal you sent. We were just the closest ship. He let that sink in. They were not an army. They were not ambassadors. They were a crew that happened to be nearby. But why leave? A Veln envoy Pulsed.Yuna answered. You have a lot to do. Your ships are weak. Your defenses are built for a gentle galaxy. The swarm might be gone, but our galaxy, it isn't gentle. You need to learn, to get stronger, not to attack, but to endure. She looked at the beautiful, fragile architecture around them. You can't do that with us here. You'll rely on us. You need to learn from what we did, not from who we are. Tay, his arm in a sling, nodded. We're patching up the Shrike. It's still space-worthy. We'll head back. File our report. The council was speechless. They were refusing paradise, refusing glory. They were going back to their dangerous world in their damaged little ship as if they had just finished a routine job. What? What should we tell others? Elix asked finally. Of you? Of this? Jay thought for a moment. Tell them a threat came. You fought. You called for help. And help came. He paused, his eyes sweeping over them all, seeing not just their fragility, but their potential for strength. Tell them the galaxy is wider and wilder than they knew, and that to live in it, you have to be ready to stand. 2 days later, the Shrike departed. It looked even more battered than before, new welds shining on its hull. It turned towards the edge of the system, towards the dark, long road home. On the bridge of the Eternal Garden, the council watched it go. They felt a hollow sadness, but also a new, solid feeling in their cores. It was not peace. It was resolve. "We will rebuild the forge," Fleet Commander Elix said, its chime now firmer. "Not as a hauler, as a template. We will study their modifications. We will build our own strength. We will adjust our environmental systems," Counselor Naira said, her fronds standing straighter. "Increase gravity incrementally in our youth chambers. Study kinetic weaponry." They had no idea who would come. Then the Deathworlders stood before them. They were not angels. They were not demons. They were survivors. And they had passed on, not just salvation, but a simple, brutal lesson. To survive, you must first learn to stand. And now, for the first time, the Galactic Coalition stood a little taller. The civilian dock was a place of graceful, curving architecture and quiet efficiency. The arrival of the humans turned it into a chaotic workshop. The forge was, as Min had said, a block. It was a rectangular hull of thick, dull gray metal, designed to haul mountains of ore from high-gravity worlds. It had no beauty. It had mass dot. This was its new virtue. Tay was in his element. He moved around the dock with a rolling cart of tools, barking orders at a team of nervous coalition engineering drones. His voice was a constant, confident rumble. "Weld that plate. I don't care about the finish. I care about the seam. More brace behind it. Think like a wall that needs to stop a landslide." The drones, programmed for delicate repair, struggled with the sheer brutality of the work. Tay ended up doing most of the critical welding himself, the actinic glare of his torch flashing in the bay. He was installing the mass drivers. They were not elegant energy weapons. They were heavy magnetic rails, scavenged from old asteroid pushers, and rebuilt to throw solid tungsten rods. Each rod was the size of a small tree trunk. They were simple, stupid, and devastating. Inside the forge, the atmosphere was one of focused haste. Yuna and Hannah worked on the dampening system. The plan was to fire all mass drivers at once, a simultaneous impact that would send a unified shockwave into the swarm's core. The recoil from such a blast would turn any normal ship into a cloud of shrapnel. "So we turned the front third of the ship into a giant shock absorber," Yuna explained to a confused Korth engineer, whose stone face was creased with doubt. She pointed to diagrams of viscous gel tanks and hydraulic compensators. "The force pushes back, the gel compresses and flows, spreading the energy through the hull structure slowly. It's like jumping and bending your knees. The forge has the bones for it. Your ships don't." Hannah was preparing the secondary option. Large tanks were being filled not with fuel, but with a caustic chemical mixture she had cooked up from common mining reagents. "If the kinetic strike doesn't fully disrupt the node, we flood the area with this," she said, her voice calm. "It will attack the bonds in their fluid matrix. Make them brittle. It's a backup." Min and Jay were on the bridge, which was little more than a cockpit with reinforced viewports. They were interfacing their own robust, simple systems with the forge's controls. Laia, their pilot, arrived last. She was a small, wiry woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She did not greet the council members who had come to observe. She went straight to the pilot's chair, sat down, and began running her hands over the controls, muttering to herself. "She is assessing the vessel?" Counselor Naira asked Jay, who was checking a pressure seal. "She's getting a feel for it," Jay said without looking up. "Laia doesn't trust new equipment. She needs to know how it will move when pushed." "Pushed?" echoed the Florian. "To its limits," Min clarified, as if it was obvious. Leia finally spoke, her voice dry. "Sluggish. Thrusters are weak. Response lag is 0.3 seconds. Acceptable, but not good. We'll have to anticipate." She turned to Jay. "We get one run. One straight line. We can't dance with this thing. That's all we need, Jay replied. The coalition watched all this with a mixture of awe and dread. They saw no ceremony, no grand speeches. The humans worked together like a single organism, communicating in short bursts, understanding each other with looks and gestures. They treated the terrifying mission as a complex job. They were not fearless. They were simply too busy to be afraid. Fleet Commander Elix approached Jay as the final welds were cooling. Our long-range scouts confirmed the swarm's movement. It will enter the Helix Nebula debris field in 18 hours. The density of the gas and dust there will it affect your plan? Jay looked at the data. A slow smile, the first any of them had seen, touched his lips. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a hunter finding better ground. It's perfect. The dense medium will carry the kinetic shockwave farther. More energy transfer. It'll be louder. Louder? Elix asked. The explosion. The ripple. It'll be more effective. Jay looked at the commander. Tell your ships to pull back. Far back. And to shield their sensors against concussive force and debris. This won't be clean. The final hours were a blur of tests and calibrations. Tay declared the mass drivers as good as they're going to get. Hannah sealed the chemical tanks. Min and Jay loaded the tungsten rods, each one sliding into its magnetic rail with a heavy. Final thunk, Laia spent the time in the pilot's chair. Eyes closed, running simulation after simulation in her mind. Soon. It was time. The humans gathered in the forge's cramped bridge. They wore their simple suits, helmets secured. There were no goodbyes to the coalition. There was a final data check, a confirmation of the swarm's coordinates, and a short nod from J. the Forge detached from the dock. Its engines, powerful but inelegant, flared to life. It moved away from the graceful eternal garden like a bear leaving a porcelain shop. On the bridge of the coalition flagship, the council watched the sensor feed. The Forge was a blunt, ugly shape against the stars. It moved towards the nebula, a vast cloud of glowing gas and rock, where the silver shimmer of the Devourer's swarm was just becoming visible on the edge of the scanners. It is so small, Counselor Naira whispered. It is a stone, Elix chimed softly. They are throwing a stone at a galaxy. Inside the Forge, the atmosphere was tense but quiet. Warning lights and readouts glowed. Laia's hands were steady on the controls. Swarm pattern conforming. They've detected us. They're shifting. Forming an envelopment funnel. She glanced at Jay. They're inviting us in. That's the idea, Jay said. Take the invitation. Straight down the throat. Yuna, dampeners ready? Online and pressurized, Yuna confirmed, her eyes on her screen. Min, weapons? Rods are hot. Magnets charged. We have one synchronized shot. Tay, Hannah, structural integrity? Brace yourselves. Tay's voice came through the com, loud and clear. This is gonna kick like a mad thing. The swarm filled the viewport. It was breathtaking and horrifying. A river of living mercury, wider than a planet, flowing silently through the nebula's dust. It began to curl, tendrils reaching out towards the tiny forge, eager to absorb this new piece of matter. Laia did not waver. She flew straight into the opening maw. The silver tendrils closed behind them. The light from the stars vanished, replaced by a shifting, liquid silver walls that flowed past the viewports. Depth charge effect, Hannah noted, watching external sensors. The fluid medium is dense. Shockwave propagation will be optimal. Central node located, Min said, his voice flat. Bearing 00.5. Distance 2 kilometers and closing. All power to frontal armor and dampeners, Jay ordered. We are a bullet. Prepare for impact. The forge plunged deeper into the silver heart of the swarm. The pressure on the hull was immense, a constant squeezing force. Alarms blared as external sensors were consumed. Laia fought the controls, keeping them on target as the liquid resistance tried to push them off course. "Node in range," Min said. 10 seconds. "Fire on my mark," Jay said. "Leia, full reverse thrust on my mark." "We need to slow the punch, not stop it." "Understood." The central node was visible now, on the scanners, a pulsing, dense knot of gravitational distortion within the fluid. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Laia slammed the reverse thrusters. The forge groaned in protest, the sound of straining metal echoing through the hull. "Fire!" Min hit the control. There was no bright beam of light. There was a deep, subsonic thump that they felt in their bones. 6 tungsten rods, each weighing tons, shot from the front of the forge and vanished into the silver fluid ahead. For a second, nothing. Then the universe seemed to stutter. A wave of pure force, visible as a sudden, perfect sphere of distortion, erupted from the point of impact. It moved through the swarm, faster than thought. The silver fluid didn't just break apart. It shattered. The connections holding it together snapped. The smooth, flowing intelligence became a trillion disconnected. Inert droplets dot the shockwave hit the forge. The dampening gel compressed. The hull screamed, and the world went white with noise and force. The last thing the humans heard was Tay yelling over the comm, a sound of triumph and pain mixed together as the lights went out. The salvage bay holding the Twilight Resolve was a cold, silent tomb. The Coalition had placed it here with reverence, a memorial to the lost. The humans saw it as a crime scene. Jay, Una, and Min stood before the wreck. It was a beautiful ship, or it had been. Its lines were flowing, its hull a pearlescent material that still shimmered faintly. One side was smooth and intact. The other was a grotesque, melted landscape. It looked less like something that had been attacked, and more like something that had been licked. The devourer swarm had touched it, and a third of the vessel was simply gone, absorbed into a smooth, concave shape. "No blast scoring," Min murmured, running a gloved hand near the edge of the effect. His touch was careful, but not hesitant. "No heat warping. It's a clean consumption. Like acid, but without the chemical residue." "They don't leave waste," Una agreed, scanning the area with a handheld device that beeped in sharp, low tones. "They take everything efficient." A small, floating drone of Florian design hovered nearby, its light blinking a soft, anxious yellow. It was their guide, or perhaps their minder. The humans ignored it. Inside the Shrike, which was docked like a grim, gray beetle next to the elegant wreck, 2 other humans were at work. Hannah was the team's biologist. Her domain was a makeshift lab of repurposed equipment, wires, and screens. The Coalition's full sensor data on the swarm streamed before her. She did not look horrified. She looked fascinated. "Fascinating," she whispered, zooming in on a microscopic analysis of swarm residue from a long-range probe. "Carbon-based, as we thought. But the bonding is fluid. It can shift between solid and near liquid states. It's a nanoscale network. They're not separate creatures. They're all one thing. A smart fluid." Her brother, Tay, leaned over her shoulder. He was an engineer, a solver of physical problems. Smart fluid doesn't like sudden shocks, doesn't like having its chemistry messed with. "Your basic rule." "Exactly," Hannah said, highlighting a molecular chain. "Look at this bonding structure. It's elegant, but it's built for a stable environment. Low gravity, thin, consistent atmosphere. It's a structure that has never known violence." Tay grunted, a sound of understanding. He turned to his own console, pulling up schematics of coalition ships and their weapons. He shook his head in disbelief. They're using focused particle beams, trying to cut with precision. It's like trying to stop a flood with a scalpel. He began sketching, his fingers moving with rough confidence. His designs were not elegant. They involved heavy magnetic rails, dense projectiles, and shaped charges. Back in the salvage bay, Jay's tongue crackled. It was Hannah's voice. Jay, we've got a hypothesis. The swarm operates as a continuous medium. It transmits instructions and shares energy through this nanofluid. To hurt it, you don't cut. You shatter. You need to send a shockwave through the medium itself. Disrupt the connections faster than they can reform. Jay looked at the smooth, consumed metal of the Twilight Resolve. Understood. What kills the connection? Two things, came Tay's voice louder. Big, blunt kinetic force, or a chemical agent that attacks the molecular bonds. Something simple, like a strong acid or base, but on a huge scale. Una, listening, looked at the pristine, clean lines of the consumed hull. They leave no residue. They might neutralize foreign chemicals quickly. Kinetic may be more reliable, but where do we hit it? A swarm that size. Find the brain, Min said simply. Even a fluid has to have a center, a place where the signals are strongest. The Florian drone finally chimed in, its voice synthesized and soft. Honored visitors, our deepest scans have detected faint gravitational anomalies within the largest swarm masses. Ripples in spacetime. We believed it was an effect of their consumption process. The three humans turned to look at the drone. It was the first useful thing any coalition member had said. Gravity lensing, Una said, her eyes narrowing. A dense core. Not a queen. A processing node. A central cluster. Jay nodded. That's the target. Not the whole swarm. The heart. Shatter the heart. The body dies. They returned to the Shrike, their minds racing. The Coalition Council requested another meeting, desperate for an update. They gathered in the atrium again, this time with Fleet Commander Alex, projecting a live tactical map. The swarm was 2 systems away, moving steadily. We have analyzed your data and the wreck. Jay began, standing before them like a soldier giving a report. Your weapons are ineffective because they are too refined. The swarm absorbs energy. It must be disrupted with physical trauma. Alix's crystalline body flickered. Physical trauma? With what? Our ships are not built for impact. We will modify one, Tay said, his image appearing on a secondary screen from the Shrike. He looked intense, his fingers still smudged with grease. We need a ship with a heavy frame. Strong internal supports. The forge, Min suggested, looking at Jay. It's in the civilian registry. A planetary ore hauler. It's basically a solid block of hull with engines on it. Tay's face lit up. Perfect. We strip it. Reinforce the frontal plating. We install mass drivers. Not for precision. For throwing very heavy, very simple slugs at high speed. We pack the front third with dampening gel to absorb the recoil, or the ship comes apart. The council listened in growing horror. They were describing turning a ship into a giant flying hammer. And when you reach the swarm? Counselor Naira asked, her fronds trembling. It will envelop you. It consumed the Twilight Resolve in minutes. We let it, Una said calmly. We target the gravitational anomaly, the central node. We go straight for it. We fire every mass driver we have, point blank, into the core. The kinetic shock will propagate through the entire connected fluid medium. It will be like hitting the heart of a jellyfish with a cannonball. It is. Barbaric, whispered a Veln envoy. It is physics, Hannah corrected from her lab screen. Their structure has never evolved to withstand this kind of force. Their world, their whole existence, is gentle. Ours is not. We are using the pressure of our world against the weakness of theirs. The word hung in the air. Weakness. To the coalition, the swarm was the ultimate terror. To the humans, it was a fragile thing from a soft environment. And if you are wrong? Elix chimed, its light dim. If you are consumed? J met its sensor cluster. Then you try the chemical option. But you'll need to deliver it like a bomb, not a spray. Our way has a higher probability of success. The silence was heavy. The plan was insane. It was crude, violent, and depended on the humans flying a stripped-down cargo hauler into the belly of the beast. You will do this alone? Counselor Naira asked. We work best as a small team, Jay said. Tay and Hana will finish the modifications. Leah will pilot. The rest of us will man systems. We don't need a fleet. We need one good hit. He said it with absolute certainty. There was no bravado, no dramatic speech. It was a statement of fact, as if he were describing how to fix a broken engine. Fleet Commander Elix looked from the brutal schematics Tay was now displaying to the calm, solid faces of the humans. They were not heroes from an epic. They were mechanics. They saw a broken system and were proposing the most direct, forceful repair imaginable. The Council had hoped for a miracle of technology. They were being offered a miracle of sheer, relentless force. We will provide the forge, Elix said finally, the chime of its voice resigned. And whatever resources you require. As the humans left to begin their work, the Council remained, staring at the tactical map. The swarm glowed, a vast silver blotch of death. Between it and them now stood not a shield, but a spear. A spear thrown by beings who considered their peaceful, beautiful ships to be fragile toys, and who saw the greatest threat in the galaxy as merely a problem of pressure and impact. They had no idea who would come. Now they knew, and they were learning that being saved might be just as terrifying as being destroyed. The docking bay of the Eternal Garden was a place of soft light and sterile calm. Air scrubbers hummed a gentle tone, keeping the atmosphere perfect for the dozens of fragile species that used the port. The airlock of the human ship, which the scanners had labeled Shrike, opened with a sound that violated all that calm. It was a harsh metallic clang, followed by a hiss of equalizing pressure that smelled sharply of ozone, and hot metal. 3 figures walked out. They moved with a gravity that seemed to pull at the very air around them. Their steps were not the graceful glides or gentle floats of the coalition species. Each boot hit the deck plating with a definitive thud, a sound that made the nearby Veln envoy, floating in its bubble, wobble uneasily. The one in front was Jay. He had removed his helmet, revealing short, dark hair and a face that held the stillness of a cliff. His eyes, a deep brown, scanned the vast bay, noting exits, structural supports, the positions of the gathered honor guard with a speed that was almost predatory. Behind him came 2 others. A woman, Yuna, her black hair tied back severely. Her expression was one of focused assessment, not awe. The third was a man named Min, broader than Jay, his gaze lingering on the bay's ceiling supports, as if calculating their load capacity. They wore simple, dark gray environment suits, unadorned. The suits looked functional, even crude, patched in one place on Min's shoulder. They carried no visible weapons, but their very posture suggested they didn't need any. A Florian aid, its fronds trembling with a mix of protocol and fear, drifted forward on a repulsor disc. Honored emissaries, it chimed, its voice like wind through leaves. The Council awaits you in the Contemplation Atrium. We have prepared appropriate atmospheric settings. This is fine, Jay said, his voice cutting through the chime. He took a deliberate breath of the bay air. His nose wrinkled slightly. Thin, but fine. Lead the way. The Florian froze. Its programming conflicted. Protocol dictated a full environmental adjustment for guest comfort. The human had just dismissed it. The aid simply turned its disk, leading them forward. The journey through the eternal garden was a silent spectacle. Word had spread. At every corridor junction, at every open doorway, clusters of aliens gathered. Multi-limbed engineers paused their work. Gelatinous vellum contracted in their bubbles to watch. Delicate Florians peered from behind shimmering privacy fields. The humans did not marvel at the bioluminescent walls, the floating gardens, or the architecture that seemed to defy solid form. Yuna's fingers briefly brushed a wall made of living, glowing moss. Efficient light source, she noted to Min, her voice low. Low heat, but a fire hazard if the oxygen mix rises. Min gave a soft grunt, his eyes on the slender, elegant arches overhead. No secondary support beams. One good shake and this whole section pancakes. Their whispers, picked up by sensitive audio receptors, were translated and relayed to the council, already waiting in the atrium. The comments caused a wave of distressed rustling and uneasy color shifts. They were not seeing beauty. They were seeing vulnerabilities. The contemplation atrium was a masterpiece of peace. A shallow pool of clear water reflected a holographic nebula on the dome ceiling. There were no chairs. Beings rested on compliant pads or floated. The air was still and SCENTLESS.J, Yuna, and Min stopped at the edge of the pool. They did not sit. They stood, their boots planted on the smooth floor. We greet you, Counselor Naira began, her fronds performing a complex wave of welcome. We offer you our profound gratitude for answering the call. We are the Galactic Coalition, a union of peace and the data. Jay interrupted, his tone not rude, but impossibly direct. You showed a consuming swarm. We need the full tactical logs. Visual, thermal, gravitational. Everything from first contact to your last engagement. The interruption was so total, it left a ringing silence. No one interrupted a counselor. Elix, the fleet commander, recovered first. A hologram sprang to life above the water, showing the devourer swarm in motion. The silvery flow, the consumption, the destruction of the harmony of dawn. The humans watched. They did not flinch. They did not show revulsion. Their faces were like stone, absorbing information. When the playback ended, showing the swarm's current position, Yuna spoke. They move as a fluid, a superorganism. Do they have a central neural node? A queen? We do not know, Elix admitted. Our attempts to scan are absorbed. Our communications are ignored. You tried to talk to it? Min asked, his brow furrowed. It is standard first contact protocol. A Veln envoy, Pulse.Min, exchanged a look with Jay. It was a look the council could not decipher. Your weapons, Jay said, turning back to the hologram. Show me the energy discharge from your ships. Another clip played. Brilliant lances of blue and white energy. Precise and clean, stabbed into the swarm. For a moment, the silvery mass would blister and contract, then it would flow back together, seemingly larger. You're heating them up, Yuna said, almost to herself. Then louder, you're just giving them energy. It's like trying to boil an ocean with a match. Their biomass is absorbing and redistributing the thermal load. What would you suggest? Elix asked, a sharp chime of desperation in its voice. Disruption, Jay said. He pointed at the hologram. They hold a form. That form can be broken. Not with heat. With force. He made a fist with his hand, then slammed it abruptly into his open palm. The sound was a sharp, shocking crack in the quiet room. Several council members flinched violently. Kinetic impact, shock waves, tear the connections between their parts. Or chemistry, Yuna added. Their composition is carbon-based, correct? From the spectral analysis of the consumed worlds? Yes, but then introduce a catalyst. A reactive compound. Spoil the soup. Make their own cohesion toxic to them. The council stared. Their warfare was about finesse, about minimal damage. These beings spoke of bludgeoning and poisoning. Your ship, Counselor Naira said softly, changing the subject. It is unique. Is it a warship? Jay looked at her. It's a converted long-range mineral scanner. The Shrike. We reinforced the hull for asteroid belt work. The guns are for breaking up big rocks. A converted scanner. They had come to face a galaxy-eating terror in a mining rig. And you, the Florian aide who had met them, whispered, bold with fear. You are from Earth. What? What is it like? All three humans turned to look at the aide. For the first time, something like expression flickered on their faces. Not pride, not nostalgia. Something harder to name. Eunice spoke, her voice flat. The gravity is 1.1 standard. Our atmosphere is 21% oxygen. Storms with winds over 200 kilometers per hour are common. Much of the native biology is venomous, predatory, or both. Tectonic plates shift regularly. We have a star that gives off radiation that can burn skin in 30 minutes. She listed these facts as if reading a manifest. Each one landed in the room like a physical weight. You live on the surface? A Korth delegate rumbled, its stony face creaking with disbelief. Where else? Min asked, genuinely puzzled. The silence that followed was profound. The council finally understood. They had not called for knights or wizards. They had called for survivors from a world that was itself a constant, active war. These Deathworlders did not conquer nature. They endured it, every second of every day. To them, the vacuum of space was probably relaxing. The Devourer swarm was just another dangerous animal. Jay looked around at their stunned faces. He seemed to come to a decision. We need your sensor logs. Direct feed to the Shrike. And we need to see one of your damaged ships. Something the swarm touched but didn't consume. Is there one nearby? Elix, still processing the concept of a 200-kilometer-per-hour wind, managed to respond. The Twilight Resolve. It is in the adjacent salvage bay. It is empty. The crew was lost. Good, Jay said, already turning to leave. We'll start there. Hana and Tay are prepping the lab on the Shrike. Send the data. And without ceremony, they walked out the way they came, their heavy steps echoing long after they had left the atrium. The council was left with the gentle nebula and the still water, their old world shattered. They had no idea who would come. Now they knew. They were being helped by creatures who found their paradise station frail, their weapons quaint, and their existential terror just another problem to solve with blunt force and chemistry. The hope they felt was now laced with a deep, primal unease. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the holographic projectors. The air tasted of filtered oxygen and the faint, sweet smell used by the Florian species to calm their nerves. It did nothing for the beings gathered there now. On the central platform, the images played on a loop. Silvery, shifting forms, like schools of fish made of liquid metal, flowed over the surfaces of once green worlds. They moved with a terrible, beautiful unity. Where they passed, the color vanished from the land, leaving only gray, inert dust. Cities were not burned. They were absorbed, digested, and made part of the swarm. This was the Devourer swarm, and it was coming closer. Fleet Commander Elix, a being of slender, crystalline structure, let the data stream end. The light in the chamber seemed to dim. Our last offensive failed, Elix said, voice a chime of pure despair. The harmony of dawn and the twilight resolve are gone. The swarm does not communicate. It does not negotiate. It consumes. A murmur of fear rippled through the Galactic Coalition Council. There were a dozen species represented. The Florians, plant-like and delicate. The Velen, who floated in their personal anti-gravity bubbles, their forms gelatinous and soft. The stone-like but brittle Korth. All were ancient, wise, and utterly outmatched. Their technology was advanced in medicine, in art, in creating stable societies across star systems. Warfare was a relic to them, a thing of distant history, and their weapons reflected that. They tried to disable, to dissuade. The swarm simply ate their energy blasts and grew larger. "There is one protocol remaining," said the eldest Florian, Counselor Naira. Her fronds trembled. "It is from the Founder's time, a contingency for a threat that could end us all." "It is forbiddance," chimed the Velen envoy, pulsating with anxiety. "The designation is clear. It is a call to a death world." The word hung in the air, heavy with old fear. In their classification, a death world was a planet of nightmare. Gravity above 0.8 standard. An atmosphere prone to violent chemical mixture. Predatory macrofauna. Seismic instability. Such worlds were marked, studied from afar, and quarantined. No sane civilization could arise there. Life would be too busy surviving to ever look at the stars. "The protocol is clear," Illich stated, light flickering within its crystal body. "If all collective defensive measures prove futile, the beacon may be activated. It broadcasts on a primal frequency. A call for help." The commander paused. "The Founders documented that only a Deathworlder could withstand another. Cosmic predator. It is in their archives. We do not know what or who will answer. We only know they are strong." Debate was short. The fear of the swarm at their doorstep was greater than the ancient theoretical fear of the unknown. In a shielded vault beneath, the council chamber, a device older than any of their civilizations, was activated. It was not a complex message. It was a pulse, a scream of terror and coordinates, broadcast into the dark. For 3 cycles, they waited. The swarm advanced, now consuming an outpost system growing ever larger. Hope was a dying ember. Then a ship translated into the system. It appeared on the edge of the designated safe approach zone. Every sensor on the Coalition flagship, the Eternal Garden, focused on it. Silence fell on the bridge. "It is small," a sensor officer whispered. The vessel was a block of dull metal. No graceful curves, no shimmering energy fields. It had sharp edges, thick plating welded in places, and massive crude engines that glowed a fierce, ugly orange. Its heat signature was alarming. It radiated waste energy like a furnace. It moved, not with a glide, but with short, powerful thrust bursts, correcting its course with aggression that seemed unnecessary. "No energy shield matrix detected," the officer continued, confusion in its voice. "Primary armament appears to be kinetic projectile launchers, primitive chemical explosive based. Their life support is dangerously minimal. The atmospheric mix inside is corrosive. High oxygen, reactive nitrogen." Counselor Naira watched the visual feed, her frowns curling tight. "This is a mistake. This is a cargo hauler, a scrap miner. They misunderstood the signal." "Broadcasting a welcome channel," Illich said, composing itself. On the main viewer, a comms window opened. The image that formed was not what anyone expected. There was no majestic being draped in light, no ancient wise face filled with knowledge. The figure was solid. It wore a simple, gray environment suit, sealed at the neck. The faceplate was transparent, revealing a face with dense skin, a strong jaw, and eyes that held a direct, unsettling focus. The eyes scanned the bridge viewer, not with wonder, but with a swift, analytical sharpness. I am Jay, the figure said. The voice was a low rumble, lacking the melodic tones of the Coalition species. It was all flat, efficient sound. We received your broadcast. We are here to assist. A pause. The Council was too stunned to respond. Jay's head tilted slightly. Your signal indicated a collective defense failure. Define the threat. Provide tactical data. Elix finally found its voice. Welcome, Emissary J. We are grateful for your response. We will provide full data links. Might we inquire? From which world do you hail? So we may properly honor your people. Jay was silent for a moment, as if the question was strange. Earth, he said simply. Then he continued, as if it was unimportant. Prepare the data. We will dock shortly. Send coordinates for a secure briefing area. My team will need physical access to your sensor logs. The transmission ended. The bridge was utterly silent. A word meant nothing to them. Earth. It was not in their records, but the ship, that brutal, hot, aggressive piece of metal, was now turning, its engines flaring with a violence that made the Eternal Garden's collision alarms whisper a soft warning. It moved towards the docking bay as if it owned the space. Counselor Naira turned to Elix, her voice a hushed rustle. A Deathworlder. They looked so contained, so dense. Elix watched the ship, its crystalline form reflecting the angry glow of the human vessel's engines. They came in that, it chimed softly. They crossed the void in a box of steel and fire. They breathed poison as air. What, in the name of the Founders, have we called to our door? They had hoped for a savior of light and advanced science. They had no idea who would come. And now, as the heavy, echoing thud of a physical docking clamp resonated through the ship's hull, a new and different kind of fear began to stir in the hearts of the Galactic Coalition. The unknown was no longer out there in the dark. It was here, in their docking bay, taking off its helmet.